ever feel like while you know how to optimize a baby's sleep, when it comes to toddlers, preschoolers, and older children, you feel stuck? You're not alone. In today's video, I'll be sharing the two main reasons why sleep consultants find toddlers and older children challenging as sleep clients, and then throw a ton of potential strategies your way using a case study of a client brought to my attention by one of our recent holistic sleep coaching graduates. Stay exactly where you are if you know that toddler and older child sleep challenges make you nervous, because today's video is going to be packed with actionable ideas. If you are serious about supporting families in a way that's gentle and responsive, then click the link below to book a call with one of our team and see if we're a good fit to work together at the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program. At the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program, we support all our students to work with families across all childhood ages in a developmentally appropriate and respectful way. I'm Lindsay, and I'm proud to have trained over 600 fabulous professionals through the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program, the most comprehensive evidence-based sleep program for those wishing to build a career supporting families gently with sleep. I'll let you into a secret. I love toddler and older child sleep. I really do. I find it interesting, stimulating, and positively challenging. But I know that many people feel much more within their comfort zone with younger children, specifically babies under 18 months. There are two main reasons, in my experience, why toddlers make sleep consultants nervous. First, they don't have specific tools for toddlers, so they have low confidence when taking these clients on. And second, they think the solution is a pure sleep strategy. Let's dive into these reasons in more depth, and then I'll share a story of a very wakeful toddler and what Joss, a recent graduate of the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program, did to support them. So let's get into why many sleep consultants lack the tools to support older children. One of the big reasons for an empty toolbox with this age range is that most sleep consultant training programs don't teach effective strategies for managing sleep beyond the first year. This in turn is partly to do with our cultural perception that all children are sleeping through the night from a young age. Many mainstream sleep educator programs might train their students to adapt a few strategies for the older age group, but toddlers and preschoolers waking in the night or needing help to fall asleep is very much presented as something out of the ordinary, even though we actually know it's really common. Because of the widespread cultural perception that by toddlerhood, little ones are long past the age of wakefulness, many parents simply don't talk about their wakeful 2, 3, or 4-year-old. Many of them used to feel ashamed or believed it was their fault their child was waking. It's only fairly recently that people are starting to be more honest about the real duration of nighttime needs. But not only are people more likely to talk about it, they're also more likely to realise that this is something they can get help with. This is where they'll reach out to a sleep coach and ask for that support. What they're looking for are specific strategies that will help get sleep back to a more sustainable balance, as well as help them feel more confident caring for their growing child. If, at this point, you try a mainstream sleep approach, you might occasionally get lucky and find that the situation can be resolved. This sometimes happens if you have a fairly simple sleep challenge or a very easygoing toddler. But if the problem is more complex, or the child isn't having any of it, then you're going to find that the strategies that were designed for infants really don't work for older children. This is tough because I know that if you're in this job, you really want to help people who are tired and desperate for sleep. And there's nothing worse than finding that your strategies are somewhat lacking and the client doesn't get the result they're looking for. This brings me on to why the strategies often fail. When you work with toddlers and older children, although the main challenge may be wakefulness and sleep difficulty, the underlying reasons are often nothing to do with sleep. That's why if you deploy a sleep solution, it may not stick. You have to figure out the underlying reason through a thorough understanding of child development, relationships, attachment behaviours, psychology, activity, play and stimulation. And this my friends, is why I love this age group so much. There's so much interconnectedness that is absolutely fascinating. It's incredibly rewarding to work with toddlers and older children because when you figure out the underlying cause, you're able to support families in a way that goes far beyond just sleep. You get to empower the family with a better understanding of their child, who they are as parents, and how they function as a family. Do I have you convinced yet that toddlers are not to be feared? That preschoolers are the ultimate sleep puzzle? I hope so. So what might those underlying reasons be? Well, I don't have time in this one video to explore all the possible reasons for toddler nighttime drama, so I'll just give you a high-level view of the main reasons before we get into the specifics of today's case study. First, they're developing independence. This is super exciting for them. They realise that their world is getting bigger and there are places to explore, experiences to discover, people to meet. Everything is fascinating, but with all that independence comes a growing realisation that mum or dad won't always be there. So it's not only exciting, but also scary and intimidating for all the same reasons. Second, they're battling with the boundaries. Boundaries are a normal part of responsive parenting, but in my experience, it can be really hard to figure out what makes an appropriate, respectful boundary for parents and children alike. Parents who made the decision to be responsive will have shown up for their little ones time and time again. When they were babies, their needs and wants were essentially the same. If they want to feed for comfort, that's fine. We don't need to overthink it. As they get older, their needs and wants are different. They always need our emotional support, responsiveness and compassion, but they're not always going to get what they want. And anyone who has ever set a boundary with a toddler will tell you that this is hard. Plus, the only way they can find out where the boundary really is and how consistently firm it is by testing it. So they do. It's all super normal stuff, but that doesn't make it easy to navigate, and this plays out in sleep challenges too. Third, they're adjusting to big life changes. This is often the age when another sibling comes along, or a house move, or a move to the older room in daycare or nursery. Just because they're the big brother or sister doesn't mean that in terms of their self-regulation or comprehension, they're vastly more mature than they were 6 to 12 months ago. But so often we expect more of them, simply because they're older. They also have big feelings, big personalities, and they are loud about both. This is relevant pretty much permanently for toddlers and preschoolers. Those big feelings, they don't always know what the feelings mean or how to handle them. They don't always know that it's inappropriate to express those feelings loudly in the supermarket. They might understand that someone is angry or upset, but they have very limited capacity to do anything about it. And they're not mature enough yet for altruism. They're naturally egocentric, and it's normal and not their fault that they are that way. They simply don't have the life skills or maturity to be any different. Their development is through the roof. Children develop in what's known as a cephalocaudal proximal distal way. That means they develop from the head to the toes and from the centre outwards. Essentially, that's why a baby's head is proportionally so much bigger in relation to the rest of their body. The vast majority of their head and brain development occurs in the first 3 years of life. They also develop gross motor skills in the same way. So they learn to roll and then sit and then stand and then walk and then run and so on. All their development is happening, sometimes concurrently, with other major developmental milestones. So at 2 years old, they could be mastering stair climbing without support, at the same time as getting their canine teeth, all while their language has exploded and they can suddenly make a 3 to 4 word sentence. That is a huge amount of change for a little one. And finally, their sleep needs are changing. Finally, 1 out of the 6 big reasons is actually directly sleep related. In the toddler years and beyond, their sleep needs may reduce overall and they may drop all naps at some point. This can present its own set of challenges for regulation and the activity levels, pace and rhythm of the day. So let's get our example into the mix. At the Holistic Sleep Coaching Programme, I host 2 coaching calls per week for past and present students to receive supervision, get a sense check or ask questions. One of our graduates, Joss, brought a case study to a recent coaching call because she wanted to bounce some ideas she'd had about a client around and see if there were any other creative strategies she could add to improve the family situation. The clients had a 2-year-old who had recently stopped breastfeeding to sleep, and during this transition from nursing to sleep, they had introduced rocking instead. This had worked well for them, but the mother had begun experiencing severe back problems and needed an urgent solution that felt respectful and yet was effective. Sounds like a sleep problem, doesn't it? So why would I say that a sleep solution would only address part of the problem? A mainstream sleep consultant might address this simply by suggesting that the parents put their child in the cot and sit beside them to support them as they fall asleep. While this might be presented as a gentle solution, anyone who has ever tried this would undoubtedly tell you that for most kids this is going to be loud and uncomfortable for almost all families of toddlers. That big personality and those big feelings are definitely going to come out. So what about an even gentler strategy? Well, at the Holistic Sleep Coaching Programme, if this was a younger child, we might have suggested a floor bed so that the family could snuggle their toddler and then creep away. We could also have suggested intermittent stopping. This is where you rock for a while and then randomly stop, making the moments of stillness longer and more frequent so the child gradually gets used to not being rocked without getting upset. Why did Joss and I think these strategies would miss the mark? Because this isn't really about sleep. I've already explained that often with toddlers, it really isn't just about sleep. So what were the underlying issues in this case, and what were the most appropriate solutions based on those underlying factors? Well, firstly, this child was learning about boundaries. At 2, those needs and wants are very different things. The child needed responsiveness, but they wanted to be rocked to sleep. That the boundaries weren't just about sleep. Whenever you work with toddlers, the underlying issues are very rarely contained to just the nighttime. Secondly, this child was at an age where the development of autonomy is really important. Children need to have some opportunities to flex this autonomy and have some power and control. We make so many of a young child's decisions for them. What they do, where they go, who they meet. Because their developing autonomy is part of them growing up, they need to have opportunities to exert some control. If they're not given opportunities, they tend to take them. And sleep is often the area where children have ultimate control. After all, you cannot force someone to fall asleep against their will. Thirdly, this child had had a lot of change and needed reassurance and comfort. They needed to know what to expect to manage any anxiety about the future and all the uncertainty that this brings. So using those underlying factors as a guide, there were 3 areas for Joss's client to work on. First, to address the boundaries, we discussed making these consistent throughout the day. Children can learn about nighttime boundaries by experiencing daytime boundaries. Parenting is a 24/7 gig, so it makes perfect sense to consider the boundaries across the whole day and not just the night. If rocking is no longer an option, this is a boundary of sorts. The child can do lots of learning in the day, which is obviously a much lower pressure time. They can learn, firstly, how it feels to encounter a boundary. Secondly, what mum or dad will do to hold that boundary. And thirdly, how mum or dad will help them manage their big feelings while the boundary is held. This helps them learn where the boundaries are, helps them appreciate that boundaries are firm lines, and this helps them navigate other situations where a boundary needs to be held. Second, to address the power and control, we discussed not only allowing this child an appropriate range of choices in the day, but also some control over bedtime. This could be around simple aspects such as which pajamas to wear or which stories, but we also discussed going one step further and giving the child the choice of how they wish to be comforted to sleep other than rocking. For example, the parent could decide what they're willing to do, whether that's a back rub, a handhold, or a head stroke, and then let their child decide. Third, to provide reassurance, we discussed the use of a social story. This is a way of communicating a social situation to a child in a bespoke way. It narrates what the child can expect at each stage of the child's bedtime routine clearly, ideally using pictures of the child, because little ones love to see themselves as the main character in a story. So there we have it, a deep dive on the complexity of toddler sleep. We've covered the 2 big reasons many sleep consultants feel nervous to take on toddlers and preschoolers, and the 6 major underlying factors to consider when you work with children beyond infancy. Of course, as children move into middle childhood and adolescence, the complexities continue, but hopefully this has given you some ideas for the next time you work with a toddler. If working in this way makes you feel enthused and you too want to be able to support families with children at all ages with practical, sustainable sleep support that is responsive and evidence-based, then you can book a call to find out more about our holistic sleep coaching program and see if we're a good fit to work together. Finally, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Speak to you soon.